Okay, so here in Arizona, we have had 2 turquoise alerts in 1 week, and that is something that's kind of in between an amber alert and a silver alert. So just if you're watching, you probably know what an amber alert is, right? A child goes missing. Sometimes they know who that person might be with, or a license plate that you might be able to look for a car, and you get that really loud alert on your phone. That's an amber alert. And then there's also a silver alert, which is when an elderly person goes missing. They might be on certain medications, or they might be confused or suffering from dementia, something like that. That's typically a silver alert to get people to be aware. And if they see that person, they can hopefully bring them back safely. But gosh, there was so much in between those 2 things that probably most of the missing persons cases in Arizona and really all over the nation fit somewhere in between those. And often those can still be just as important, just as dire to try to find somebody. And that's kind of where a turquoise alert came into play here in Arizona, as well as the fact that we have a crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people and women that are going missing at staggering rates on our reservations here in the state. And there needed to be better alert systems for that as well, which is partially why it's called a turquoise alert. It's named after a Native girl, and we're going to get into that. But I want to explain to you guys what kind of turquoise alerts we were talking about this week. I want to take you to some breaking news in one of these cases as well, and just explain where these cases stand. So I want to show you 3 girls on your screen right now. On your left is Emily Pike. That's the 14-year-old who was found murdered and dismembered in the Arizona woods about a year ago in February of 2025. There's eventually a law called Emily's Law that then created the Turquoise Alert fairly recently, named in her honor, and that's why we have that today. That brings me to these other 2 girls that are on your screen. In the middle there, that's Isabella Comas, 21 years old, still missing under very suspicious circumstances outside of Phoenix here. Her boyfriend in custody on charges related to her disappearance, but she is still missing tonight. And then on the side of your screen is 8-year-old Mollie Boone. She's a little girl from the Navajo Nation. A turquoise alert went out for her last week, and then pretty quickly after, she was found dead. And we're getting breaking news in her case too. Now there's a big reward being offered by the FBI with new information in her case. We're going to get to that in just a second, but first I want to kind of just explain to you guys how a turquoise alert comes to be, what qualifies for it, and then what that means for the case itself. So here's the thing with the turquoise alert. It is cited as Emily's Law in honor to memorialize the life of the San Carlos Apache tribe girl, Emily Pike. But there are 5 criteria that have to be met before a turquoise alert can even be issued. So you think there's some timing involved in this as well. It can't just be issued immediately. Here's what a case has to meet. The missing person must be under the age of 65 years old. The law enforcement agency that's investigating it must have already exhausted all the local available resources before they go to this. The person that has gone missing must be under unexplained or suspicious circumstances, and the law enforcement agency must deem that this person is not a runaway. That is a very controversial part of this, because there are some times when a runaway might be in just as much danger as somebody who is not a runaway. So that part is a bit controversial and talked about by people who disagree with it. But that is one of the criteria to be a turquoise alert. You cannot be deemed a runaway. They must believe that the person is in danger or potentially in the company of somebody who is dangerous towards them, and that there is information that if they are able to put this turquoise alert out, that this could be disseminated to the public and assist with either bringing them home safely or assist in a recovery. Those are the 5 criteria that something must meet to become a turquoise alert. And that kind of explains where this is. Often, too, these are alerted or they are put out for people who are of a different background, that are Native, often Indigenous, or in Isabella Komas's case, she's also Hispanic. So that gives you a little bit of information as to what a turquoise alert is. I know it can be a little bit confusing, but it becomes really important for the cases we're about to tell you about. And I want to start with breaking news in 8-year-old Mollie Boone's case. Now, the little girl went missing on January 15th. She lived in a place called Coal Mine, Arizona, that is near Tuba City, which is pretty rural. It's northern, and it's part of the Navajo Nation reservation. What we knew before was that Navajo police were first searching for her in the coal mine area where she was last seen. At the time, allegedly playing around 6 p.m. outside her home. But then her family said it was very out of character for her to be gone for an extended amount of time. Now, a lot of people in Arizona got a turquoise alert on their phone, which was very loud, and it was at like 5 a.m. in the morning the next day. So it woke a lot of people up, which one, I guess, was good because that got people aware and knowing about Mollie's case first thing the next morning. But when you think about the timing that went by, if she was last seen around 6 p.m. and we weren't getting the alert until 5 a.m., that's quite a bit of time for things to happen, and time is of the essence in these cases. Well, it was several hours later when we learned from the FBI and the Navajo Police Department that the Turquoise Alert was canceled because she had been found dead. But there is not a lot of details about how she was found dead. We don't know the cause of death, and nobody has been even named a person of interest in her case. Just minutes before we started recording this segment, we learned new information from the FBI. I'm going to read the press release. It just came in on the phone, because now they're offering a reward for information, and we have a little bit more detail as to when exactly she went missing and from where. So here's what it says. Under the reward section, the FBI is offering a reward of up to $25,000 for the arrest and conviction of those responsible for the death of Mollie Boone. And her real name is Maleeka Mollie Boone. She went by Mollie. What strikes me in that initial message is that they're saying that there's a reward for the conviction of those responsible for her death. That's interesting wording to not say the person responsible, which would lead me to believe that investigating authorities may believe that there are multiple people that were involved in Mollie's death. Here are the new details they gave out. The FBI and the Navajo Nation Police Department are seeking information regarding the death of 8-year-old Maleeka Mollie Boone. On January 15th, 2026, at approximately 6 p.m., Boone was reported missing from her neighborhood in Coal Mine, Arizona on the Navajo Nation. Here's the new information. Boone left one family member's home at approximately 4:15 p.m. to return to her home where she lived. Both of those homes are in the same neighborhood and in close proximity to each other. Boone's body was located in a field within the coal mine neighborhood at approximately 8:30 a.m. on January 16th. So this whole thing strikes me. She often went to different family members' homes in the same exact neighborhood. She left one family member's home to just go back home to her family for dinner and didn't make it. But what's really hard about these investigations on the Navajo Nation and in these rural areas is that you don't have the same kind of surveillance footage, technology, even sometimes just internet access to be able to have what you would say maybe multiple cameras, multiple things that could track somebody. And that makes these investigations a lot harder. You also have a much more limited amount of officers who can cover these square miles of a very large reservation area. The timing of this also strikes me as well. So she was leaving around 4:15. They reported her missing at 6. So that in and of itself, an hour and 45 minutes, a lot can happen in that time frame. But then that turquoise alert went out around 5 a.m. and they found her dead around 8:30 a.m. So there were some hours in there as well. Was there heightened awareness? Were there other people that were searching for her because of the turquoise alert? Possibly, and that's information we're still waiting for. They stopped short of saying exactly how she was killed, where she was found. Was there anything at the scene that would, help anybody identify what could be there? My guess is if there was anything at the scene that they could be using to try to find who did this, they may purposefully not be revealing that because it might be something only the killer or the killers know. But clearly they are looking for help. In my experience, I'm not sure that they would be asking for a bunch of help if they knew who did it, but they also could have an idea and be trying to throw that person off and trying to get there to be more tips, more information. Anything that could corroborate something could be helpful. So again, the breaking news today in Mollie Boone's case, no persons of interest named, no suspects named, no arrests, but now the FBI and the Navajo Nation Police Department issuing or have a $25,000 reward for anybody who can lead to those responsible for Mollie Boone's death. That was one of the turquoise alerts last week, but the other was 21-year-old Isabella Comas, and that's actually the first one that we had last week. I want to tell you a little bit about her case. 21-year-old Isabella disappeared from her Avondale neighborhood under suspicious circumstances on January 13th. Now, she was reported missing after she did not show up to pick up her friend from work, which was super unlike her. And then she didn't show up for work on Monday morning, and nobody could reach her. What's very concerning is this man. This is her boyfriend, 39-year-old Tommy Rodriguez, and he is considered a person of interest in Isabella's disappearance. He was charged with criminal damage, auto theft, and a probation violation, and he was booked on those charges. He allegedly got her car, and then there was other issues as well. The theft may come in criminal damage from other evidence that they know that could have been destroyed or, tampered with. Her cell phone was tracked and found at a recycling facility in Phoenix. That is very random. We don't have a lot more information on that. But we do have information on Tommy Rodriguez's criminal history. And that really ups the ante in this case even more, because it is pretty clear that Isabella Comas is likely in great danger. Here's what we know about Tommy Rodriguez. He is a past convicted killer. He shot and killed an innocent person when he was just 15 years old. According to his criminal history, he was doing a drug deal. He was involved with some drug dealers, wanted to rob somebody at gunpoint. So he went to that person's apartment, and when they opened the door, he just started shooting and killed the person inside. What Tommy Rodriguez didn't know was the person he was looking for had actually moved out of the apartment. The person who lived there was a young nursing student, completely innocent, did not know these people at all, and was shot and killed just because Tommy Rodriguez wanted to go and shoot up and rob some drug dealer. He was convicted and sentenced and spent a lot of time in prison. But then after he was released, he also stalked and assaulted an ex-girlfriend in 2020. And that brings us to now. So there are clearly such concerning aspects about Isabella Komas's case. She has not been found. She is still missing at this time. There is a very active search going on for her. Her case still very much in the headlines. Everybody wants to bring her home. But that's what's going on with Isabella's case. And she triggered a turquoise alert because she disappeared under suspicious circumstances. She's also of the Hispanic heritage. And so that was one of the turquoise alerts that really got people's attention. People still trying to find Isabella Comas at this point. But I want to also talk a little bit about Emily Pike's case, the 14-year-old who was found dismembered in the woods in Arizona last year. Emily Pike is the reason that there is a turquoise alert in this state, because they ended up citing Emily's Law, creating Emily's Law, and the turquoise alert was part of that to help. What I find ironic, though, is not only is Emily's case still unsolved today, there has been no movement that at least the public knows on any persons of interest, any suspects, any new evidence. It has seemed that Emily Pike's murder case is at a standstill. But she had run away from her Mesa group home before she was found killed. And she was a chronic runaway from her group home. That was documented, and they documented her last disappearance as a runaway too, which means that under the turquoise alert that was named after Emily Pike, it is likely that Emily's case would not have qualified under the turquoise alert at the time because she was listed as a runaway. And that does just highlight a large flaw within this system, even though it's very good that we have the turquoise alerts that bring awareness to these cases that might have been swept under the rug or not have gotten the same spotlight as before. There are still clearly issues with the turquoise alert because Emily's case just highlights that. And so I talked to and did an interview with Darlene Gomez. She is an attorney who also works pro bono for a lot of the families that are involved in the missing and murdered Indigenous peoples and women movement. She has helped so many families and really has brought the MMIW and MMIP crisis to the forefront in this country. She has created so many viral videos of cases of families of Native people that have gone missing, that have finally gotten the attention of everybody and law enforcement and the prosecutors as well. And she's really changed things. I've met with her and seen her a lot of times because she was able to get successful prosecution in a federal case that happened here in Arizona of Jamie Yazzie. That was a very famous case. But she's done a lot of work since then, too. We first met Darlene back in 2023 when we were working on our documentary, The Forgotten, which is about the MMIW crisis here in Arizona and across the nation. But she has seen some change. And when it comes to two turquoise alerts, it's exceptionally concerning that we're dealing with this in 1 week. There's some positives because, yes, we're moving forward in these cases, but there's so much more to this as well. Darlene's going to be able to shine light on that. She also attended a briefing from Mollie Boone and was able to learn so much more about the 8-year-old from her classmates, from her teachers, and that becomes an emotional part of the interview as well. But because this is so important with the MMIP and MMIW movement, I wanted to sit down with Darlene, and we did that. So without further ado, I want to bring you my interview with Darlene Gomez about everything that's positive about the Turquoise Alert, that's negative about what's going on, and where we can do better and how you can help in cases like this too. Here's our interview. I'm joined by Darlene Gomez. You are an attorney for missing and murdered Indigenous women and people's cases, and a very, very important advocate really in this whole movement and the change that we've seen over the past several years with awareness for these kinds of cases. So I'm so glad to have you on the show. I know we've known each other for a couple years now, working together on our documentary a couple years ago, and then seeing the progress that's been made over several different states, but specifically here in the Southwest on these movements. So I want to get your take on, the success of the Turquoise Alerts in terms of awareness, but also we've seen a large number of them in 1 week. To have 2 Turquoise Alerts in Arizona alone, 2 girls, one 21, the other 8 years old, one found dead, the other still missing. There's a plus side in terms of so many people are now aware of who Isabella Comas and Mollie Boone are because of the Turquoise Alerts. But is there concern from you in the fact that we've had so many in 1 week and these are unsolved cases right now?
The concern for me is that we have 2 this week, but we also have so many more cases that were turned down where they were not able to get turquoise alerts. So that's the concerning part for me as well.
And I know when you say that, we know there's this criteria to meet to become a turquoise alert. The cases that are getting turned down, what are you seeing in those cases that are the reason they won't issue a turquoise alert?
Well, most definitely one of them is if they're runaways, which if you look at the statistics for runaways, it is said that at least 1 out of 3 runaways will be trafficked within a week of them going missing.
So you'd like to see that extended to
most definitely, because that is our most vulnerable population.
Right. And I mean, with Emily Pike being, what this was named after, her case is still unsolved, and she was a chronic runaway, and she was still in a dangerous situation, even though she was labeled a runaway. So it is possible that even at the time, had there been, awareness for Emily at the time she went missing, perhaps they would not have issued a turquoise alert for her because she was a runaway and had documentation of being a runaway. But now this alert is Emily's law and named after her.
And that is really sad to know that under the criteria for Emily's alert, she would not have qualified.
So Emily's case is still unsolved, which is upsetting. There's been a lot of awareness about Emily, about what happened to her. Not a lot of movement, though, in the cases. And something that I've seen just in reporting what's gone on when there is a turquoise alert. People are paying attention. They're paying attention to the names, but I've seen several people comment that they didn't get one or don't understand what's going on, feeling that even though they've got the alert, that the authorities are just not doing enough to research and to investigate these cases properly. A lot of criticism really that I've seen, at least online, from people about how these cases are handled. From your standpoint, you work with these agencies, you work with police departments, you work with the legal entities on all of this. When it comes to a turquoise alert, are you seeing success from your side of things? Is there things that could be better, or is it kind of a little bit of both?
I think it's most definitely a little bit of both, because we have the turquoise alert, but we also, when we're talking about Mollie, she went missing on a reservation. And so if you look back 10 years, that's when Ashley Mike went missing. So we're looking at 10 years later, and now there's the Amber Alert in Indian Country that was named after Ashley Mike. And so it's 10 years later, and we're still trying to maneuver what to do when children go missing.
Well, and it's hard, with at least the 2 cases here with Isabella and Mollie's cases. Isabella, You have the concerning aspect of the boyfriend's history. He was a convicted killer already. He's already been arrested for aspects that surround her disappearance, not for any sort of death yet, but she's still missing. And that does give at least a clear lead in her case. But in Mollie's case, it seemed very random out of the blue.
Well, and I think one of the differences also is when you're looking at the case of Isabella and she's in a city and there's cameras everywhere.
Yes.
And then we're looking at Mollie's case where she's out in the middle of the Navajo Nation. If you look at the population of the Navajo Nation, it said that 30 to 40% of households do not have running water and electricity. So in the area that she went missing, cell service can be very spotty. The same with radio service for police officers. I doubt if there's any cameras around the area where she went missing.
Which is so much harder than to investigate.
It is.
If you can't get the alert out or, anything that could aid with an investigation. So,
correct. And then, some of the other issues is that you have jurisdictions as well, because the first officer called was the Navajo Nation police officer. And so what was the time that it took the officer to get there to take the report? And then the protocol is then they will call the criminal investigator for the Navajo Nation. And then at that point, the criminal investigator will determine if they need to call the FBI. So how long did it take the FBI to get there? Yes. So they're saying Mollie went missing between 4 and 6 p.m. By the time the FBI command center was set, what time did that occur? And I really wish that the Turquoise Alert would have gone out immediately after she went missing, but there's so many steps required by the statute that that's how you lose valuable time.
Right. And we know time is of the essence, especially in the first 48 hours of a case or somebody going missing every time. So that makes sense. I know you said you attended a briefing for Mollie and Mollie's case this week. What did you learn from that?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry because it was so incredibly hard to listen to all of the incredible stories about who Mollie was. Her teachers described Mollie that day as it was Mollie's day, and she was shining bright, and she always helped all of the children, and she was always smiling, and she was the first to offer help to anyone. It kind of hit home with me because as a child, I was that little cowgirl with a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and the same little bangs that she had, and, just feeling incredibly sad for her, the kids that were in her class. And then for her community, her siblings, her mom and dad, her grandmothers, and just what a loss it is for this community. And she was just a shining star all over. And everybody just described her love for horses and animals. And she had this whole world ahead of her. And now to know that that was just taken, and that you have this community that always protects one another. And then that day, for some reason, nobody saw what happened. And I think then the community starts feeling bad about not being able to do anything. And she comes from a community that is so close and close-knit.
Right. I mean, at the time she disappeared, she had last been seen playing outside, a typical 8-year-old activity. And yeah, now they're all left with wondering. I mean, it's tenfold. You've got these two-pronged issues going on right now with grief in terms of losing Mollie and dealing with the loss of that little girl in that community. You also seem to have fear because this is not solved. Nobody's been arrested or charged in her death. The investigators have remained pretty tight-lipped right now. I just talked to the FBI yesterday, and same thing, no new information yet. I'm staying in touch with them about it. But have you learned anything more on the investigation side from your end at all?
Nothing at all. And I believe because you have so many agencies that are really trying to find out who killed her, and a community that is so close-knit, I believe that they're not sharing that information because it could be very easy. Someone could be related to someone in that community who is a police officer or who could be a EMS worker. And that's the thing about small communities, tribal communities. Although the Navajo Nation is very large, each community within the nation is very tight.
Right, right. Something that I saw people commenting on social media, specifically with this case with Mollie, was people almost trying to connect these dots and saying, "Oh my gosh, Mollie was now killed, and this is unsolved, and Emily Pike's case is unsolved, and there's other disappearances," and people are very genuinely asking if there could be a serial killer out there. Now, that is highly unlikely, but I think that the community is, and just the public as a whole, is seeing these and saying, whoa, why are so many girls being killed or going missing? And the sad part is this is pretty prevalent. It's likely not the work of a serial killer. These are things that are happening every day.
Well, when you talk about that serial killer, I mean, New Mexico has just had a case where there was a gentleman who was a serial killer, and that case is now in federal court. And so if you look at communities, even like the community where Jamie Yazzie went missing, there is a lot of men and women missing from that community. And could there be a serial killer? Yes. And can there be serial killers on the Navajo Nation? If you look at the numbers of individuals who are murdered or missing, I think that is, a possibility.
Really?
Yeah, most definitely. I think in this case with Emily Pike and with Mollie, there's probably not a very close connection because they're so far apart.
Right.
But I mean, the person who killed Mollie could very well have killed other people on the nation. And I think we have talked about the fact that so many cases on the Navajo Nation are not solved. Very
Right.
few cases get prosecuted. So you have individuals on the nation who know I can kill, and more than likely I won't be arrested. And so you have these individuals who are predators who just continue to be predators. And that's what scares me the most.
Yeah. And it just seems that it's also can be this generational trauma as well. We're seeing it through families for years, that there might be a history of violence for many years. Kids grew up in that kind of environment, then they're prone to it. We have these turquoise alerts, and that definitely helps with awareness. And in general, the MMIW and MMIP movements have changed a lot and have opened a lot of eyes, I think, to what's going on. The awareness part seems to be a lot better, but the actual fixing of it still seems that we're not there yet. Where do we need to go from here? I mean, what needs to happen next pretty imminently to start making some real dent in this so that it's not this epidemic that goes on for years where this is happening to our Native families?
Well, I believe the Navajo Nation, through their president and vice president's office, they have initiatives that are working on these Amber Alerts in Indian country. The Navajo Nation has a very good task force, and they continue to work on the same issues. And the Navajo Nation Council continues to work on these issues. So I feel like the Navajo Nation as a whole is working to try to limit the individuals that go missing, but also having plans for the community to get mobilized.
Yeah.
Because in so many of these cases, once the community finds out, they can mobilize. They know the areas better than any FBI agent or Navajo Nation police officer because this is where they live.
Right. Right.
And it's generations living there. And so through the Department of Justice, they have a program which gives training and gives grants for tribes all over the country to make sure their Amber Alerts are working.
And that's huge. I mean, these are things we weren't talking about 5 years ago that weren't in place. So I mean, there is definite progress on that. One thing that I think people see, and I know you can kind of address more of maybe the red tape behind the scenes, But let's just take Emily Pike's case, for example. It's almost been a year since she was found dismembered and dead. And there was a ton of coverage, and there continues to be a ton of coverage of her case, which is amazing. But at the end of the day, it's still a year, an unsolved case of a teen girl who was dismembered in the woods. And there's really been seemingly no movement on where that investigation stands or even getting closer to making an arrest. I think people look at that and say, why is this taking so long? Why is there not more that we have at this point? What do you typically see with these kinds of investigations that holds up any sort of arrests and then prosecution?
Well, for one, you're talking about all of these jurisdictions because, for one, she went missing in a city, traveled through counties. Then you have the Arizona State Patrol, and then you have the county sheriff's office, and then you have the FBI who is now helping. So there's so many jurisdictions. So it's the collaboration between all of the police agencies that are working on this case.
Yeah.
And so for one, we're hoping that they're getting together monthly to share information. But you don't know. And that's with law enforcement. It's that lack of transparency. And I believe it's because they're trying to solve cases. But, in your previous documentary, you heard from the FBI who said, we do not share information with families to preserve the investigation. So I feel like that's the catch-all for all law enforcement.
Right. It provides a buffer.
We don't know how long it's going to take for the evidence to get tested. Where's it being tested at? What lab?
Well, we thought in Quantico. I mean, that's what they told us at that point. That means it's shipped off to the East Coast and then sits there for years before it's tested.
Correct. So I think that's another issue. We also know that a lot of times prosecutors do not want to prosecute a case unless they have a highly solvable case, a highly probable case that they'll win at trial.
Right.
So that could be the case here.
Right.
We also don't know if tribal police are fully cooperating with the FBI and the sheriff's department because there was issues with prior sexual assaults that happened on the San Carlos reservation. So all of those pieces have to be put together in a puzzle. And so if you have one agency who is not sharing information in a timely manner, then that puzzle can't be fixed.
Right. When you talk about, there's so many aspects, right? It's this giant puzzle of things, and it's like you figure out a couple pieces that are better, but there's still X, Y, and Z missing to make it feel like it's a whole, that everybody's working together as a well-oiled machine towards a greater goal. But the silver lining of even this conversation is that people are talking about the Turquoise Alerts. They're coming out. They are bringing awareness to these cases far more than they may have before it existed. Have you seen a positive impact that the Turquoise Alert has made in terms of bringing more awareness and eyes and urgency to the cases of missing and murdered Indigenous people, and also just people of color or of different backgrounds, like Isabella Comas is Hispanic. But have you seen it working for what it's meant for?
Well, most definitely. In Isabella's case, it's working because people are sharing her story, and it's in the media. And so for other cases, it does seem like this Turquoise Alert has helped to find other individuals who went missing.
Right.
So we're in a far better place today than we were prior to the Turquoise Alert.
Are there more states that should have one?
Most definitely. I think every state should have a Turquoise Alert. And what I especially like about the Arizona Turquoise Alert, it's for any individual who's missing.
Yes.
If you look at New Mexico, it's only for indigenous people who are members of a recognized tribe. So that Turquoise Alert should be brought in to include all individuals who are missing.
And that makes sense. And I know the reason it exists, at least in Arizona, the way that it does is because for the older generation and population, you have the silver alert. And then for an abduction, you have an amber alert. But you often find most of your missing cases somewhere in between those. And often it's not a a typical abduction, but it might be somebody who is in danger or there's suspicious circumstances. And I feel like that was severely lacking in our kind of alerts, at least in this state. But I do think there's been some success. So it would be nice to see that expanded to other states in the nation. Because, I mean, as we know, and as you've said for years now, the MMIW, MMIP movement, but also crisis, this is not just in the Southwest. I mean, this is nationwide. This goes up into Canada. Have you seen improvement in this crisis since we did our documentary? It's been about 2.5 years, 3 years this year. What have you seen change in those three years?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen very much changes occurring. Men and women are still going missing, and children and two-spirited individuals at the same rate as they were 2.5 years ago. One of the biggest benefits that I'm seeing is that media is covering cases, and that now there's chapters all over the country that are dedicated to MMIWR. And you have tribes that are specifically setting money aside for grants for community organizations to help combat that problem. We're seeing awareness. We're seeing the communities who are just getting together and saying, we are not going to sit back and watch our people continue to be victims. And communities are finding their voices. They are banding together. And so for me, that's a positive movement that's been occurring. But overall, just looking at the numbers, we're still extremely high. Yeah. Prosecutions are still extremely low. When we're talking about reward money, one of the benefits of getting that reward money out there is that potentially that's going to bring someone forward, which Emily Pike has a $200,000 reward. I have a case in Oklahoma, Brandon Kasika Sr., and that reward money has brought a ton of tips.
I mean, it's an incentive that anybody wants to latch on to. And sure, you hope that people will call in tips regardless, but anything that can aid in just getting more awareness so that there can be more tips and information seems like it would be the best possible option.
Oh, most definitely. But you also have to see, in order to connect that puzzle, you need people on the outside that saw them together.
You're right.
You know, you need that circumstantial evidence. Even if you believe someone did it, you need to prove it. And so you need everybody to start thinking, did I see her and him in their car?
I mean, you're an attorney. There can never be too much evidence and too much corroborating information, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And just to go back to something we were talking about, one of the questions I have is, why was there not an Amber Alert for Mollie immediately after she went missing?
I'm not sure. I think the only reason I can see is if they didn't believe she was abducted. But I guess does that lead you then to believe that possibly they are looking at it as she was outside and she was killed while she was outside right there, as opposed to she was taken somewhere else?
I don't believe so. I believe she was taken somewhere else and picked up from that area. Because if you look at that housing area, there's a ton of people coming in and out, lots of kids, lots of adults.
Somebody would have seen something if she was right there.
Correct. Yeah. So when I'm looking through the Amber Alert, the criteria, maybe it's because they didn't know who that abductor was, which is part of the criteria.
That could be. But you're right. I mean, I think the Amber Alert is the one of, if not the most recognizable alert that this nation has. And that you get that really loud alert on your phone. Now, you do get an alert on your phone for the turquoise as well, but it always feels that the Amber Alert is very, very urgent. But you're right. Typically, when we get those, it says, so-and-so has been abducted. We believe they're with this person. Look out for this license plate. So that criteria, I guess it's just what a higher bar to meet to get that. And then it seems like the Turquoise Alert is that almost like second tier when it comes to that.
And I think also with Mollie, the fact that the Turquoise Alert went out at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And she potentially went missing between 4 and 6 p.m.
It's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time, especially in those first 24 to 48 hours.
Right. So maybe there's definitely room for improvement on these things. Though glad we have a Turquoise Alert, and that is helping get the urgency out there for these two cases and other cases. You know, often when we've had a Turquoise Alert here, the person has been found, which is good. I mean, thank God. But with these two cases, one still missing and one dead in 1 week, it's concerning. And I think anything we can do to get the awareness out there for these two cases, for these two girls, 21 years old and 8. I mean, these are young girls that have their lives ahead of them. So we want to get their stories out there. With Mollie, I'm so glad you could provide us some information just about what her classmates and teachers are saying, because that's something we don't always get, especially down here in the city. We don't have all that access as much as we'd love to her life and kind of that tight-knit community. So I'm really glad that we're able to learn a little bit more about her and her life and her short life, but a meaningful life. As we wait for more in the investigation, obviously we're paying attention to these. They are a top priority for us as well. Is there anything else you want to leave people with who are watching, who might be learning more about Turquoise Alerts, learning more about the MMIP, MMIW movement, the crisis, what our Native families are facing and what they can do? I think people watch this and they're like, gosh, how can I help? And what would you leave them with on that?
For what I would say, remember that Mollie is this beautiful 8-year-old that is very much like your family members. Mollie loved pink and purple and yellow. She loved horses. She loved to smile and help everyone. And you have to remember that Native Americans are just like you. And when you see people who are going missing, especially MMIWR, please share their flyers. Try to reach out to those family members and say, I'm thinking about you. Oftentimes we have to remember that these families are searching for their loved ones with no help from anyone else. So everything comes out of pocket. So even sending Walmart cards to families and saying, here, this can help you with water for searches, for clothing to be looking for your loved one in 10-degree weather. Also give to agencies that support MMIWR.
Yeah. And there's a lot of places that you can find those resources. And in the caption or the description of our show, I'm also going to put resources where people can reach out or learn more about this movement, about these cases and everything like that. So I really appreciate all you do. I know I've said it for years. I don't think that the MMIW, MMIP, MMIR movement would be where it is without you and all the work that you've done for these families. So I just so appreciate you coming on and giving us some insight kind of in the behind the scenes, what's going well, what's not going well, and how we can best remember these very important people in our community and how we can do better too. So Darlene Gomez, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll stay up to date with you as these cases evolve as well.
Great. And thank you for having me. I always appreciate having a platform. Yeah. And at any given time, one of the things that other people can do is reach out to the different communities. The Navajo Nation has the missing and murdered Dene relatives. Reach out to them. Reach out to the organizations that are boots on the ground and ask them questions. Come out and help them. Come out for rallies. We have May 5th coming up, which is the National Missing Persons Day. And just come and enjoy what we have to offer as far as bringing awareness.
Thank you.
And there's
so
never
much.
a stupid question. And I think oftentimes people feel like, okay, I'm not Native American. I feel funny asking this. But families and advocates, they want to take your answers. They want to answer your questions. And also, it's helpful to be able to do presentations to different organizations based on questions people have.
Oh, totally. And you make a great point. I mean, before I did the documentary a couple years ago, I didn't know a lot about everything in this world, in this crisis, in this movement, and I'm still learning every day. But I feel like everyone was so warm in terms of being open to sharing themselves, their vulnerable stories, and also educating. And I had a lot to learn too. And people are really, really kind, and I think that they care a lot more about what you want to know than maybe what you don't know so far. They want to help you on that, and I think they're just happy to have the support too.
Most definitely. And the Navajo Nation, I'm really proud to say that they are working together within all of their organizations to try to get this Indian alert, the Ashley Mike alert working on the Navajo Nation. And so I think that is amazing to see that they've been consistently working, and then all of a sudden this tragic accident happens right in the middle of them planning for something like this to occur.
And quite frankly, we know that unfortunately Mollie's case won't be the last, and hopefully this doesn't happen again. But if it does, they're working towards a way to even have more awareness in their own nation as well. So we'll have to stay up to date with you on that too as that evolves, because you're right, that's super important. But I so appreciate you just shedding some more light on this and all the work you do. So thank you for coming on the show. And of course, we'll stay in touch with you as we always do.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Our thanks to Darlene. We learned so much from her about that. And she was a huge part of our 2023 documentary, The Forgotten, put on by our True Crime Arizona team. If you want to watch that, we have a link in the description to that documentary on YouTube. You can click that and learn a lot more about the MMIW crisis. We also will have some resources in the description as well linked if you want to get involved in how you can help with the MMIW and MMIP movement.